What? Is there something on my face? Welcome back to my channel. If you write in urban fantasy or just fantasy in general, then stay tuned because today I am talking about writing villains. So this doesn't always have to be the case, but 9 times out of 10, the villain in an urban fantasy or whatever fantasy will be some sort of mythical creature. Could be a vampire, a demigod, or a werewolf, or something of the sort. Some sort of monster that instills fear, demon, that sort of thing. The first thing I would consider when creating my character before I begin writing is, even though it would be a mythical creature, in my case I write about demons, if you haven't guessed, you still want to make them relatable as possible to a human. Even though they may look like a yeti, you still want to bring in a connection to your readers about something emotional. Give them a backstory that portrays love or betrayal or something devastating that the readers can relate to, so that you're not creating a shallow villain. Shallow villains are very cliche, and that's something you want to avoid, because if you have a villain that's just wah and really is just like, going around eating people for no reason or killing people for no reason, then it becomes kind of annoying to continue reading this character that you really just hate because it's annoying, and not hate because of the atrocities that they're doing, even though that might be part of it. In order to create a better villain, you want to bring in some sort of connection that we can relate to. So because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, I'm going to use Darth Vader as an example. Before Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader, he was not so drawn into the dark side. No. He was learning to be better. He was learning to be a Jedi, and he was under the teachings of Obi-Wan and was not giving off any indication that he was going to be Vader. Okay, he wasn't going to turn out to be this monster that he did. But Anakin Skywalker, he loved, he fell in love, and his mother was murdered. I don't know about you, but that definitely brought out the feels in me, and I was able to empathize with Anakin Skywalker. So later on, when he became Darth Vader, I knew what drove him to that dark side. He was after saving the ones he loved. He was after immortality. And even though he was going about it the wrong way, and you hate him because he's killing and doing horrible things, a part of me still feels like, oh shit, Anakin. If you get the point. The next thing I want to bring up is to make your villain a worthy opponent. If they don't really match up to the hero, and they don't have any powers but your hero does, that wouldn't really make any sense in an urban fantasy. But do something. Okay, maybe it's like, maybe he's a hacker, maybe he's a tech-savvy, villain. I don't know how your story goes, but make him a worthy opponent. Your hero shouldn't be able to just destroy him or her at a whim. It should be very difficult, and if you're writing a series, it might take a few books for your hero to be developing their powers and their characteristics and their courage to be able to confront the villain. Because your villain, you're making them strong and instilling fear, and not anyone can just approach this person or this vampire or demon or whatnot. Maybe your villain hides in the astral plane, so it's really impossible for your main character to get to, and they're just like poking fun at them through the veil, and your protagonist is like, what the f is going on? Okay, I don't know. It's just an example. but you get the idea. Make them a worthy opponent. They cannot just be easily defeated, but there will be a way that they do get defeated, so at the same time, don't make it impossible to defeat them, just difficult to learn how. Maybe your villain has goons, and they are unapproachable that way. So maybe you don't need to introduce your villain right in the very beginning. You know, something about making a very scary villain is not to show them all from the very beginning, and to just leave little breadcrumbs and little images to incite fear. So one way to do this is maybe they are some sort of mythical mobster in the city, and they have goons that cause havoc everywhere, like, you know, like the Joker had goons doing, you know, setting up bombs and doing things throughout Gotham City, and he spreads out, you know, as a mastermind, he spreads out all of those atrocities, all of those killings, murder, you know, whatever you have your villain doing, making himself higher into a pedestal, so it's harder to get to him or her, because your protagonists are now fighting off all of these other goons and they don't have a second to think. So something that I suggest doing is to write out your villain's backstory. This doesn't always need to go into your text. It can, maybe in pieces, but sometimes you don't even need to put it on there. What it does is it gives you characterization. Why does your villain have the certain personality that he or she does, and how does that relate to the past? Okay, that way you give them an enriched backstory, and now you are creating a relatable character. The reasons for their personalities make sense. Maybe it's inherited from their father or mother, or they were picked on as when they were children. So all of these things, you're creating a person. So keep that in mind, that when you're writing, and I know that some of you might be pantsers, so perhaps you don't plot or flesh out these characters before you write, but it really is helpful to do this so that when you do actually write these characters, and I've done both, it's a lot easier going in knowing how you want your villain to be portrayed from your protagonist's point of view and from the point of view of your readers. The next thing is make sure that your villain has a motive. Why are they doing what they are doing? Why do they want to destroy the protagonist? It's not just because they're evil. Okay, they have to have a reason. Why do they want to take over the world? Is it only because of power? Why do they want that power? Do they need to feed on people in order to survive? Do they want to take the world to harness organs to feed its own population in another dimension? Whatever it may be, just make sure that you flesh out the reasons so that you have a strong enough motive for your villain. This will make it easier for getting to the end of your book and your series, and it'll make it easier for knowing how your protagonists, your main characters, will destroy your villain in the end. Now, I'm writing a villain, Azazel. I'm writing the backstory of the villain, so that will be out soon, sometime perhaps in December or maybe early January, I'm not sure. It's a novella, actually. And so my villain, you don't get to know him until book 2 of my series. But what I have done with him is given him some redeeming qualities. He's very charismatic, he's good looking, he's sassy, and he's actually kind in many cases. That will completely throw off the reader, because you start to like this character until they do something that isn't very nice, and it reminds you, oh, I can't fall for it. It's not our job to fall for it. It might be the main character's job to fall for it. Although we hope she doesn't. But this will throw you off, or throw off the reader a little bit. Give your villain some redeeming qualities, something that you can relate to, or something that you can't help but admire or like. Maybe they are nice to dogs. Maybe they like to collect kittens or bunnies. I don't know. Maybe they like babies and they won't harm a baby and instead have your villain save a child. Is it out of character for them? Is there a reason why that villain did what he did? Can it be linked to his or her backstory earlier on before they became a villain? Ask yourself these questions. One thing you can also do is to give your villain similar characteristics to your hero. Can your hero see themselves in the villain? And vice versa. What would happen if you wrote your villain and your hero that way? Would they be introspective and realize, oh, I'm more like this villain than I possibly think I am, but no, I can't be that way because I'm not going to turn out that way. And your villain would be thinking, you fool, you're just like me, and this is how I'm going to trap you. I don't know. Flaws and faults come pretty easy to villains, maybe, I would say, because we would think that their less redeeming qualities will be their faults. If they like to murder people for the fun of it, I'd say that's probably a massively deranged, psychopath quality. Anyway, if you give them tics, if you give them quirky behavior, maybe they're massive smokers, maybe they have an addictive personality, maybe there's something about them that makes you think of them. You can always use these little quirks to your advantage later. Maybe they are, this is a stupid example, but where's my pen? Maybe they have this really annoying habit of going like this. And you have an office setting and your protagonist starts, his blood starts to boil every time or maybe your villain hates that the protagonist does that. Either way, you can use it to your advantage because one or the other can hear the other coming. Or pick something else. The point of that is to make sure that you give your villain some characteristic that makes the reader recognize them immediately. Maybe it isn't some stupid tic that way, but maybe your villain loves to play psychological mind games, and that's their MO. This one's a little bit of a difficult one to write, but maybe they are absolutely devoid of personality. So they're kind of blank, and they're kind of, I know that this doesn't make a fun character, but if you write it well, it can be a fun character. That they have a personality flaw. They are socially inept. So they're calculating on the inside, and it instills fear on the outside because the protagonist, maybe it's their boss, and they don't know what to make of this villain, of this person. Are they good? Are they bad? What are they thinking? What are they going to do? That one's a little bit more difficult to write because you don't want your story to turn out boring. And if you're writing it in the eyes, of course, of your main character, the protagonist, you really have to bring in those emotions out of them. Maybe the villain has this very glassy stare and just, you're not sure if they're looking at you or if they're looking past you. And your protagonist is there thinking, did I do something wrong? I need to go. You also don't have to have only one overpowering villain. In my series, I have a main villain, but he really doesn't show up until book 2. and then something happens to him so that in book 3, one of his lackeys thinks that, oh, Azazel's no longer here, I'm gonna take the power. And then this one becomes the partial villain until Azazel makes his comeback. Because you can't get rid of a demon so easily, especially when they cannot die. But while I'm on that topic, in this pretty little book right here, Escaping Demons, you really don't know that Azazel is the villain unless you read the novella before, or the novelette Defying Demons before. But if you just pick up book 1, then you're getting a different perspective. The main villain is a lesser lower demon who is more of this, he's a scorpion demon, and he feeds off of psychic energy. Your dreams, your creativeness, that sort of thing. Your life force. This villain can come across as being sort of cliche. But as you get deeper into, well, just book 2, so deeper into the series, just book 2, you start to learn that, well, Azazel, so this is a spoiler for anyone who wants to read the book and hasn't read it yet, so I do apologize, but Ozo was actually created from the main character's mind, because in my world, in my series world, everything, our subconscious mind is connected to the astral plane. So everything we dream about, all the nightmares that we have, anything that we hold on to for too long of a time, for instance, fear, anger, sadness, we are creating these nightmares called egregores. So the main character, Addison, having grown up in a world where her father was a magician and conjured evil spirits or demons on a daily basis, when the main character was little, she was afraid of stepping out of her room, especially that there were scorpions in the keys if you didn't fumigate, and she would be afraid of walking barefoot in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or to get a drink of water because of what could be lurking in the dark. So she forgets about this, and Azazel, who I've been keeping an eye on her, created that monster and gave it life because he has the ability to do that, and then threw it back at her as a challenge. The reasons why, you'd have to read the series. I've given you enough of a spoiler. So if you are writing a cliche type of villain, make sure that it isn't just a shallow cliche, that there is a reason behind this villain's plot, because that scorpion demon Ozo is not the main villain, he was just a pawn. So if you're looking for a list on what could make a good villain, I can give you a few. The first one I'm gonna mention is the one that I have written, which is the demon Azazel, and that is the betrayed. The betrayed villain who lost something, lost a piece of him or herself because of someone he or her trusted and loved, and they took it away. Maybe they killed their significant other, or their parent, or something drastic, maybe their child, and they were betrayed by the ones that they love. The second one I'm going to mention is the mobster monster. The mobster monster. You can pick a mythical creature. It can be a werewolf or a vampire or a demon, or create your own monster. Maybe it's an alien mobster. You get the point. They want to access control. Maybe they're running a drug thing. Maybe they like to rob banks. Maybe they just want money. Maybe it has nothing to do with life force and money is the motive. The mobster monster. Which brings me to the ancient immortal. This could be a reaper, a demon, a vampire, etc. Or it could be a human, like an alchemist that learned how to create the elixir of life and now they're immortal. Perhaps now the only way they can sustain their immortality is by eating souls, and they have to harvest humans. Get the idea? The next one I'll mention is another human, the Hunters. And no, I don't mean Sam and Dean Winchester, because those were the good guys. But let's spin that around. What if your protagonist was a mythical being and the villains were the humans? They don't have magical powers, but they have technology. Maybe they are military, ex-military, and they are out to kill your protagonist. Maybe your protagonist is misunderstood and they don't kill humans. Or maybe some do and some don't. We do see this in Supernatural, but a lot of times they still end up dead. And Dean and Sam are the actual antagonists in their stories, but every villain is a protagonist of their own story. But you get the idea. Overlord Mastermind, for whatever motive this Overlord Mastermind has, please make it a good one, because this one's definitely overdone. A lot of these are kind of overdone, but you know, when you write your own story, you're making it your own. Just try to avoid cliches and you'll be fine. But the cool thing about this Overlord Mastermind is you do have a lot of research to write on how to write a character that is smarter than you are. Yeah, I said it, because they are a mastermind. So you have to do some historical research to see what other masterminds have done and what their motives were and that sort of thing. But it is a trope, so if you want to write it, go for it. And the last one I will mention is, of course, the creature or monster who eats humans. Or babies. Okay. It just needs to eat. It somehow got released on Earth and it's hungry, like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Monsters gotta eat. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, you can definitely do cute things. Look at It from Stephen King's It, the clown. Yeah, he eats children, right? Yeah, and he's still a very, very worthy rival to the protagonist because they're children. So, of course, he is. In The Shining, in the second one, Dr. Sleep, that was here. In this book, they are sort of like psychic vampires, also eating psychic children. You know, snuffing the life out of them. Stephen King really likes to make children protagonists suffer, but that's his MO. But you get the idea. Monster who eats children. So these are just some examples. The list of ideas can be endless. So hopefully you've gotten some good ideas from this video, and you can go off now and create your supervillain. Now, do you want to know my favorite book that helps create some awesome villains with their backstories? Even talks about some strategy. I'll give you a hint. It is not a book about writing villains. No, no, no. It's a completely different genre altogether. But if you are in some dire need of inspiration, then I urge you to take a step out of the whole how to write a villain writing circle and pick up a book by Robert Greene. This is a great book, 48 Laws of Power, and it is a very Machiavellian text, so be warned, but it is a great historically researched book on actual villains throughout history that can give you some ideas and pick and choose. Pick and choose. There has been some terrible, terrible people on this planet that we can learn from in order, instead of trying to learn how to be a dictator, like this book suggests. Maybe not. I'm joking. Robert Greene, don't come after me. Don't quote me. Maybe it doesn't suggest, but it definitely gives you insight anyways on, how to point these people out to protect yourselves. But we writers can use this book to our benefit in creating some awesome, masterful villains and their rivals. So, highly recommend 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. And before you go, if you are interested in my villain Azazel, then don't forget to get started on my Castilian Blood series and pick up Escaping Demons today. Go on. You want to get into it. It's fun. I'm Killian Wolf. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Happy hauntings.
One life for the revolution.